What's up, Wholesale Nation? I'm Andy Speed.
And I'm Undrea King.
We're excited to be here for you today. Glad to be back in the office, man. It's been, 2 months since we've been open?
It's actually, it's been since like right after, what was it, spring break? Yeah, spring break. So the first week in March, since the COVID landed. Feels like it's been like an alien landed here and things went crazy. But yeah, it's been since then. So what is that, 3 months? Is that 2 months?
That's 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, so it was the first week of March.
Right. So yeah, it's been crazy, right? And but glad to be back in the office. We're almost 100% right now. I think we're just missing a couple of people that are going to be back in the next week. So we're excited for that.
Yeah, it feels good to be somewhat returning back to normal.
Yeah.
You would think that it sounds nice. I'm sure there's a lot of America that was thinking that, hey, it sounds nice, I could stay home for a couple of weeks, but then that turns into a month, and
right.
You eventually get stir crazy. So
right.
Glad to be returning back to some normalcy, and looking forward to the topic we have today for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And for those who maybe you watch this later on and you don't know what the hell we're talking about, we had a little pandemic in 2020. And things came to a stop and a halt. But yeah, it's like I said, it's been for me, it's been great. I changed some things on how I do things. I think I worked out a little bit more. I read a lot more. So I was able to adjust to it. Right. And so that's kind of what our topic today is going to be about, is, how people adjust during a crisis and how they respond during a crisis. So
right. So unfortunately for us, we had seen this before, and obviously not to the magnitude of this, nor the amounts of unknown, but some of the baseline factors that have happened or have happened here in Houston in the past.
Right.
And you and I have talked to a couple of times, and I know we had talked with the team when we transitioned to closing down the office and continuing to keep the business running and make the adjustments that we needed necessary. Fortunately, we were blessed to not to have to make that many changes. We'd already incorporated buying over the phone and stuff, but
right.
There's definitely a significant impact, worldwide in this case of people's lives being turned upside down. However many people are unemployed, like 30 million, I think, unemployed right now. And you got to imagine that there's some serious financial distress in some families, and it's something that's very serious, and it's something that we've also faced here in Houston. Right. Obviously not on the scale,
at more of a micro level versus what just happened. Because this was worldwide. Worldwide.
It's worldwide.
This wasn't just Houston. This was a worldwide, stoppage. And, versus before. And when we're talking about Houston, we went through, 3 floods, with the biggest one here being
3 major floods, and one of them just being
just ridiculous.
Outrageous, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had some, 4 or 5 smaller floods in the last 5 years as well.
Right.
But the 3 that were huge.
Yeah. And I would say those other floods, that because we had that huge flood, we've had floods that have been other sides of our town, but we just ran right through it. Like we knew what to do at that point because we were used to it.
You notice how neither one of us is actually saying the flood.
Yeah.
like that event that happened.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the amount of destruction, and it was massive. I mean,
right.
There's, comparable to what's going to probably happen in the next 6 months is businesses are going to be closing. People are, they're completely bankrupt. They're upside down. They don't know what to do.
Right.
And we're going to be experiencing that. I mean, if the average American, I can't imagine, can go 6 months without an income.
Right.
Right now we're still in that stage of where there is some government assistance, and
right.
where there is lenders that are being asked to not hound their people or their mortgagees. That's going away. We've got, I think, 7 tenants that haven't paid in the last 2 months, and for us it was 48% of our tenants didn't pay that first month, but it's since gotten better. But there's still 7 that are greatly impacted.
Right.
And they're not at risk of being evicted. Legally right now you can't.
Right.
But this is all coming to a head at some point in the next 6 to 8 months, and we saw it with Harvey in Houston. Then people are eventually going to want to get paid, and it's going to create a lot of opportunity for.
Well, I don't think it's eventually. They have to get paid.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Landlords have to get paid. Eventually it starts to roll back down the hill. So
right.
People are going to have to get some money at one point.
Right. Yeah. And we owe on our apartment.
Right.
So we have to pay. We need rent to pay it. Right. Unless we're coming out of our own pocket. But either way, that's going to create a lot of circumstances where somebody whether it's the person that lives there that's getting evicted, the person that owns the place, or the lender is going to be going through a major shift in the next, year probably.
Right.
This is not a small event.
No. And it hit all parts in real estate, for example, it's hit commercial, right? I've seen, a cousin of mine, had an issue with commercial loans because they weren't doing commercial loans. So it changes things, so people who thought they were going to do some bills and things like that, all that changed. So we're seeing that. And we, like you said, we saw, some of that during Harvey. And we also saw how people responded during Harvey, right, and how there was, people are responding during this time. And like you said, it's still going. So, and that's kind of, I would say what this podcast is about is how you respond, even moving forward. But, we can talk about, of course, how people responded over the last 3 months going into this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And we had a number of conversations, and we did have the conversation with our team about there's two types of people that from this. We don't know. We don't have a magic ball. I mean, there's a lot of talk every time a major event like this happens about what's going to happen to the market. When's the right time to buy? When's the bottom going to fall out? All these questions that nobody truly knows the answer to. But there is one thing, and we did tell our team almost as verbatim, there is one thing that we can guarantee, and there's two types of people, at the tail end of this in our industry.
Right.
And we saw that after Harvey. It was one of two things. It was what? Those that use it as an excuse of why they didn't hit their goals, and then the other was those that used it as a stimulus package.
Right.
We helped between you and I. This is so to give you guys a little bit of history. This is when Undrea and I partnered up. We partnered up a month before
Harvey hit. Yes.
Okay. So we're very new in our partnership. We're trying to set up our goals, and we had no basis for what was realistic and achievable. I was about a month and a half into downgrading my marketing, and then we were in the discussions of what we were going to use to market,
right?
As one, and then dividing labor and whatnot. Harvey happened, and for us, we did 38 deals from in 3 months,
right?
Or 4 months.
And for those, just to put it in perspective, for those who are not familiar with the flood that we're talking about, Harvey, that hit Houston with over 50 plus inches of rain. And so put that in perspective. If you've ever been through a flood, most places are like flooding with like a couple of inches. Just imagine 50 inches hitting you of water, and houses were literally washing off, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't just hit just a part of Houston, right? It hit like Houston.
It hit a lot of Houston.
Right.
That was, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was astronomical how many people were displaced from Harvey, and just the amount of destruction to business. I don't know the factors or the numbers on it. We were pretty well knee deep in water. Not really worried about statistics.
Right.
It was a great time for us to come together for sure as a city. And there were lasting effects, and we're still seeing some of the effects. I mean, we've looked at flooded houses still to this day, 3 years later. They still exist. And either way, it was very obvious, and we do a lot of local masterminds, and I would urge you to as well. But it was obvious that there were two types of people, and we even had some in our national mastermind that were coming from Houston, and it was this impacted my business negatively. And for us, we're looking at like, man, we got an extra 15 properties out of it, that we weren't planning on hitting.
Yeah,
in hindsight, we should have spent way more on marketing,
right,
and tried to do 60 deals.
Right. So let's talk about that first person that you talked about. You have that person who the flood happens, right? And
let's go with COVID.
Yeah, let's do COVID.
What has that person been doing since COVID started?
All right. So from having conversations with people, number one, that person, I would say they for the most part stopped working. What I've seen is that they slowed their marketing down. Right. They've also, if they had a team, they've winded their team down. Right. And that's, I assume that's because they slowed their marketing down. Right. And because of that, I assume at that point, they're also getting less deals because it all just kind of falls in line. Right. So if you do less marketing, you get rid of your team. Now, I understand that because there were some things that are out there that said, cut the fat. Right. And we may have had that same issue also. I went through and cut a lot of fat, right? But that was a business mistake before COVID even happened, right? So they had an issue maybe with having too much going on in their business anyway, that they didn't need. But when COVID came, it just, it brought it to light. Like, we don't really need this person. But there were some people who just cut everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And, at that point, I feel like they were trying to save themselves out of whatever was getting ready to happen. And they didn't know what the outcome of all this was going to be.
Right.
Right. Is that kind of what you saw as well?
Yeah. And you were much nicer than I would be. I'm thinking of the solopreneur. Mm-hmm. He just got lazy.
Yeah.
Maybe getting a little too distracted about what's going on. It is an election year as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of distractions, and I've fallen victim to that, as you know.
Right.
So we've had a discussion.
Yeah.
At one point that, I was cutting out TV. I picked up YouTube, and YouTube ended up as down that rabbit hole experience.
Yeah. And that's funny you brought that up, because that's a big one for entrepreneur also, is that typically entrepreneurs aren't the people to go and just be staring at television, staring at the news. We're always trying to have that positive mindset. And I would say some of those, like you said, those solopreneurs started watching the news, and the woe is me started happening, and the world started, the sky started falling on them. And if we talk wholesale in particular, a lot of those people were also going, they were going face to face, and they were wondering, like, how are we going to, people are not going to let me come in their house. They're not going to want to sell their house to me because of, the COVID's going on. And the whole thing is that was false, right? Yeah. That was just, it's something that they made up in their head, that people weren't going to sell their houses. But what is the one thing that people needed right now during a crisis?
Right.
Money. Right. The people that were selling their houses, they still needed to eat. Right. And some of these, what we found is some of these houses that we were purchasing were like, that we were getting out of contract, were houses that were like, the person wasn't going to sell it. Maybe they told us, screw you guys. Right. Mm-hmm. But now they realize this house hadn't been performing. It's costing me money. We got this crisis going on. They want to sell their property. Or we started seeing vacant property start coming up as well, where, persons thought maybe they were just holding on to it and they were going to keep it.
Right.
But they've been paying taxes on something that's not making them money. Right. So we started seeing those people saying, hey, you know what? I want to sell my property. Right. Yeah. But the wholesaler that was out there sitting down and I don't know, what do you think they were waiting on? I guess that would be the question.
I think really looking for an excuse just to not.
Right.
To not succeed.
It's easy to be lazy.
An entrepreneur has got to figure out how.
Right.
What's the highest and best use of my time right now? It's not a matter of what you're going to do; it's how you're going to do it.
Right.
There's a lot of sellers out there that need my help. How am I going to find them? And as you were saying, we did see a lot of sellers that reached a decision point on account of coronavirus. It was probably 3 to 4 deals attributed with just staying in their ear. Mm-hmm. Their situation changed. It's time for me to sell. I'm done.
Right.
We would have had that opportunity if we were just sitting licking our wounds, waiting on something to happen.
Yeah. And the other part as an entrepreneur is sometimes you have to get out there and pave the way, because you don't know, like, this was a crisis that was all over. You don't know how it was going to affect the economy. You don't know how long it was going to last. Right. So my thing was, you got to get out there and start figuring out, what are the objections? What's coming up with what are the sellers saying? Mm-hmm. Right. And we figured that out very, in the beginning. Right. Because we saw that sellers were kind of like, they still were like in the clouds on things. Like they like didn't believe that, this was affecting prices. Right. And affecting, their home values. Right. Mm-hmm. They were still trying to sell the properties at a certain clip. Right. And you're going to get that today also when you get out there. So if you waited 3 months to start being able to overcome that particular objection, you're going to be 3 or 4 months behind the person who's been out there already doing it. Right. And we saw that during Harvey, where people sat down. People didn't go out and put bandit signs and things like that, versus, people like us. We saw people get out there and start mucking out houses and things like that, because they started having conversations with the sellers early on, mm-hmm. right? They knew exactly what to do, and those are the people who got the properties versus the people who finally 6 months later is like, oh, let me start marketing for flooded properties. Well, right. Look, you got to figure out even how to work and sell these properties, right? Had you started 6 months before that, you would have been, well off, right? And that's what's exactly happening right now is what we're seeing. Okay. So that's I would say that person that's, the wholesaler that's out there. What else would you say? Anything else on, what you're seeing for some of the people?
I think it's all comes down to perception and relentless pursuit.
Right.
You can use an excuse for anything. I can't do this for this reason. COVID's happened. It's shut my business down. Well, you can adapt, you can adjust, and you can do it quickly.
Right.
You have to survive in business. Survival is not mandatory in business.
Right.
And, in order to succeed, you're going to have to, face some adversity.
Yeah.
Face some change and be open to pushing through your own limitations, which we all have them.
Right.
Obviously I would be pointing one finger and then four back at me if I was pointing at somebody. I definitely have that exposed. There's people that win because of this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity to help people. People need help right now.
Right.
People don't understand that their loan forbearance for 6 months doesn't mean that those payments just go away. It means that they're doubling them up and the bank's asking for their money 6 months from now, but they haven't been able to save because they're in financial distress during that time. It's going to happen and people are going to need help. And, good wholesalers and good investors need to be there to help those people.
Right. And I think that's really the whole point of a wholesaler, right? Is to go out there and solve problems. Well, there are a lot of problems happening or getting ready to happen, right? And so if you want to be sharp, my thing is if you sat down over the last 3 months, you might want to stand up and get to work now, right? Because you are running from behind, but doesn't mean just because Andre said I'm behind, I might as well just sit down some more, right? That doesn't do anything for you. But get up and it's time to get to work, right? Start from today, all right? You're gonna learn some things that we've already learned, right? Like I said, with the sellers, and I just give you a little kind of a recap of what we experienced during that time. Like I said, the first thing was sellers, right? Sellers trying to keep the prices exactly the same when we know that there is something going on in the economy on the buyer's end, all right? The other thing that we saw was the buyers. Buyers started, without them, I don't think it was really their fault, but their lenders started drying up on them, right? And we saw like 4 or 5 deals that we had that had hard money and they were ready to go. They started pushing back and then pushing back, and then eventually they had to push out. Right, and we had to replace them with cash buyers.
And that further reason for why people take the easy route. It's easier to just wait until all this goes away.
Right.
At some point, life will return back to normal. The market will return back to normal. Life will continue as normal. If you wait until that time, you've missed a tremendous amount of opportunity. Right. So the one thing that I would add is have some integrity. So there are a lot of people right now that are going to need help. It goes without saying that you need to treat people the way that you want to be treated.
Right.
But it still needs to be heard because there are like a lot of people that are going to be in bad situations from wholesalers, from investors. And, make sure you're keeping that in mind to do right by people. For sure, because there is going to be a lot of opportunity for snakes in the water, for lack of a better term. I love my snakes. But
So. You're going to have that. We saw a lot of that during Harvey as well, right? And I'm sure you're going to see some of that coming up as well.
What's interesting is that's probably why that was on my heart to say.
Right.
Because I literally just opened up Facebook and saw a guy that we sold 2 properties to that screwed us over, that screwed somebody else over.
Yeah.
The post you were telling me about, I opened up Facebook and I saw it. It was right there. But there's no room for that in this industry. And
but we know it's going to continue it'll continue to happen.
Until
right.
we get regulated.
Right.
And
then
then the hustler survives and all the little.
Right, but that makes it bad for everyone else, right? Will it make it hard for us? But it also will make it easier for us. But we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're abiding by the guidelines and things like that, right?
Much like when COVID hits, we're going to adjust, adapt, and push forward.
Right, and then we look at the person that did take off and do the right thing. Right. That's the other person, right? The person that didn't see that the sky was falling. They saw it as a economic stimulus package. right? You knew that there were probably going to be, if you didn't know it, you at least had a positive mindset that people still wanted to sell their houses, right? And that was us, right? We knew for health purposes and not knowing what was going on that, we may want to close the office, right? And just for me, I want to make sure everyone's safe, right? You could go and you could bunk up against whatever they said or anything like that. But my thing is I can't, push my beliefs and things on the team, right? They may have some things that are going on, that will make them sick or something like that. So we closed the office. But we never stopped, right? We continued on. We continued our weekly meetings. We continued our daily huddles. We just went virtual with it, right? The good thing was our business was already operating virtually. Like we were already buying over the phone. If you go back a few podcasts, we talked about how we transitioned to buying over the phone. So we were able to jump into it and continue to go, right? And I think last time I checked with yesterday's, we've done about 36. We've had 36 contracts in that amount of time, right? Now we've had about a 32. I think we're at 32% fallout rate, right? But we set a goal of 40%. So we are seeing that. But what we saw in this was that the other person is going to be just now experiencing is that we did see longer than normal close times, right? Which when you have longer than normal close times in a wholesale business, that is not traditionally how you would want to run a wholesale business, right? Because it stresses cash flow when you do that, right? So my thing is,
welcome to the world of a flipper.
Yeah. So you've moved into a flipper world at that point.
Yeah,
right?
I've had some flashbacks of being in my flipper days where it's like, all right, I'm okay.
Yeah.
45 more days till I get paid.
Yeah. But if again, had we set to the side and said, we're going to wait, we would have been just experiencing that today. Like if we opened back up today and we started doing this, we would even know that, okay, if we don't push these properties, get them out there, we don't get on dispositions, we don't get the pictures, if we don't push our process and stay on top of it, then we might even close the deal in that point, right? The seller may back out, the buyer may back out, whatever it is, right? So we learned a lot during this, during this pandemic that I wouldn't want to start learning today, right? I'd rather have learned that over while it was going on, and now I know how to get past it, right? And I believe that that's one of the differences that I think a person who sat down versus a person that kept moving, what they're going to notice, the difference between the two. Okay,
perfect.
Yeah, and so go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to close it up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in summary, there's two types of people, and when facing some adversity, you want to be on the winning side of that, which is just finding the grit to keep forward, pushing forward, and figure out how to do it.
Right. Yeah, that's it. And I would tell, for that person that's getting ready to move forward, and I'll put that on you, Andy. So what advice would you give based on what we just talked about? What advice would you give to the person that has either been sitting down or the person just getting started in wholesaling today, right? What advice would you give them right now on getting started?
To somebody just starting today?
Right.
My advice would be no different than pre-COVID.
Right.
It'd be the times, there's no better time than now.
Right.
Do it right, do it smart. The path of least resistance is not always the best path, but find out your path, where you're going, and get there.
Right. And then for the person that we're talking about that basically started watching Netflix 3 months ago.
Started watching Netflix. I cut out TV. I haven't watched hardly any. I watched 7 minutes yesterday.
Right.
And I felt bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just got to dig deep. I mean, if it's a personal choice and there's a reason why you did it and you can afford to do it, go right ahead. You spent the last 2 months soul searching. It doesn't necessarily have to be your business. If you were productive the last 2 months, if you're a better person, then I applaud you. As long as it was intentional. If you're struggling to eat and you're, you got to look in the mirror.
Right.
And, there's some outside circumstances, but everybody faces adversity and everybody's in the same boat right now.
Right.
Maybe different ships, same ocean, but you just got to figure out how to push through it.
Right.
I mean, winners and losers are created right now.
Right. And I think that's it, right? At the end of the day, you gotta dig down deep, and like I said, and unless, like Andy said, like if you've been doing this and you got 10 years worth of savings, by all means, wait, hold the cash, and see what happens, right? But I'm assuming that that's not going to be the majority of the people that we're talking to today, right? And if that is not you, then yeah, it's time to get to work, right? If you hadn't been working till today, start today. Get your marketing going. Start talking to sellers. Start making offers. You got to understand what's going on in the market. You need to understand what the ARVs are and what the properties are selling for. Okay. So with that, I think that we're going to have more podcasts specifically over what we see going on and what's been going on in our business and what we see in the marketplace, because this is ongoing, right? We're going to see this going on for quite a while, right? And it may change how we do some things, and we'd like to be transparent on what we find out and how we're navigating through it so that it can help other people, other wholesalers or investors that are getting ready to go through it if you hadn't gone through it. Okay. And then again, if you have not had a chance to check out our Facebook group, go to Wholesale Nation. Check out our Facebook group. We are looking to grow it's kind of a group of wholesalers helping wholesalers. But we're if you hadn't had a chance to go there, like it, and become a part of the group, right? We answer a lot of questions there that wholesalers have, and other wholesalers ask a lot of good questions there as well. Okay. If you are looking to follow me, you can follow me at Undrea King on IG, and Andy, you can follow him at
_AndySpeed_.
All right. And guys and gals, again, thanks for joining us. It's so good to be back on the ones and twos. We're excited, but looking to put out more of these here pretty soon. So with that said, now that's a wrap. Yeah. Y'all come back now. You hear?